Growing up, one of my favorite video games was Sonic the Hedgehog 2 for the Sega Genesis. The high-speed platforming game was always a fun time for me, and if you've been with my channel for a while, you know I'm quite a big fan of Sonic in terms of his games. Sonic is spanned across so many forms of media, like I brought up earlier, from video games to cartoons to movies, lunchboxes, action figures, and something I've surprisingly never talked about on this channel, but a comic book. Sonic's had 3 versions of the comic, not counting spin-offs like Sonic Boom or that really weird Knuckles the Echidna comic. First off, there is the UK-based Sonic the comic, which I have read, I think, 2 issues of that, but I've never fully got into it besides hearing a lot of really good things about it. And then there's the current IDW comic, which I have read a little bit of it, and what I have read, which is up to, I believe, issue 11, I've really enjoyed. However, this video is not about those comics. This is about the one that I grew up with, and that is the Sonic the Hedgehog comics done by Archie Comics. The Sonic the Hedgehog Archie comics released in the mythical year of 1993 and lasts until 2017, which for a video game comic is surprisingly a long time to last. I believe it was actually the longest running video game comic running ever at that time, and even still today. The main premise of the comic book is based off the Sad AM series, also known as Sonic the Hedgehog, the animated series. It's a group of freedom fighters of Princess Sally Acorn, Bunny Rabbit, really awful pun there, Antoine, whose name I can't really pronounce correctly, Tails the Fox, and Sonic himself facing off against the evil Dr. Robotnik, his nefarious sidekick Snively, and other villains such as Ixnaugus, Scourge, the Anti-Sonic, and more. The early issues of the comic are a lot more different compared to the later ones, so Sonic the comic, as you probably know, is based off the video game Sonic the Hedgehog, and Sonic is a very cartoony character, and when these comics first started, around the time is when Sad AM was going on, and we had Adventures of Sonic the Hedgehog, and this definitely tries to go for more of a comedic approach rather than a serious approach. Until around issue 39, I'd argue, which is Rage Against the Machine Part 1. The comic was still quite silly at this point, but it's around that point, I believe, where they start to develop more serious storylines. For those worried about not seeing other popular mainline characters such as like Amy and Knuckles and Shadow, don't fret, as they do appear in later issues. Knuckles is actually pretty early on in the comic, as Sonic 3, I believe, released a little bit after the comic started. So they obviously made a Knuckles issue to hype it up. That's a very good issue, actually, starting out in the comic that I do like a lot. Knuckles would later on get his own comic, but I'm gonna kind of save that for a later day, as I'm not super familiar with how that comic is, because it's very weird, the issues I've read, and I will get into the writer of that comic later on in the video. The comic did change a lot as new writers that came in, with Ken Penders and Ian Flynn probably being the most recognizable. It's ironic because one of them's really bad and the other one's really good, but the comic would still retain its comedic aspect throughout its run, along with its serious aspects on as well. If we're talking my first memory of the Sonic the Hedgehog comic, I'm not really sure how old I would have been, but I remember going to Uncle Lee's one day with my mom and grandma, and they had a very small comic section in the store, and they had a lot of stuff like the Simpsons comic. I believe there was a Looney Tunes comic at the time, but the one that stuck out to me was the Sonic the Hedgehog one, because at that time I was currently playing through Sonic Adventure 2. I knew I would have been younger, so I do remember that, so it was fresh in my memory. I remember seeing a Sonic comic book, though, and I wanted it because, well, like I said, I like Sonic, if you don't know from this channel. My grandma actually ended up buying me the issue, and I remember really liking it, and that issue was issue 18, Wedding Bell Blues. The main plot of the comic is that Eggman has gotten word of Sonic and Princess Sally Acorn's impending wedding, which is a very weird storyline, I know. However, there's more to this wedding than meets the eye, and Robotnik is very comedic early on in the comics, as opposed to... He's comedic in the Sad AM series as well, but he's definitely a lot more serious, not compared to his, like, Adventures on the Hedgehog, where he's just an idiot, Pingus and all. Part 1 of the story actually starts with Robotnik throwing darts at a picture of Sonic, which I really like, and after a while he hears about the wedding, decides to basically Vince Vaughn everything, crash the wedding. Spoilers here, the only thing I know about that movie is the name, but I thought the joke was topical because it's about a wedding. In the end, however, Dr. Robotnik's plans are foiled by Sonic, and the wedding would have been a play all along. At the end of the comic, Sally tells Sonic maybe one day they could get married, and Sonic proceeds to run away. I really like that piece of dialogue, by the way, because it reminds me of that quote, or that line from Sonic Heroes, when Amy's talking about like, getting married to Sonic, and Sonic just goes, "Marriage? No way!"
Marriage? No way!
And you also have like the Simpsons billboard reference on how you should wait for marriage.
I understand. We should follow the lead of today's celebrity role models.
Overall, this issue is really kind of okay. I briefly skimmed over it, because, like I said, it's been a long time since I've read it, but for the age I was at, I really liked it. But at that age, too, I liked about anything I could get with Sonic, so... Years later, I would get more into the Sonic comics, thanks to a random YouTube channel I found that had basically uploaded scans of the comic with music in the background, mostly related to Sonic. Every once in a while, he would post something, just like a Head Trap song, oddly enough. I don't know why. I admittedly don't remember the name of this guy's channel, but he is a big reason of why I got into Sonic, so I doubt he's watching this video, but random person used to do that, thank you. I actually owe you quite a big part of my childhood. It was just something that kind of helped me kill the time, though, when I got home from school, and that actually became a daily thing for me. I would read the new issue the guy would upload later, and after a while, I actually discovered on Amazon that they were they were selling these Sonic the Hedgehog comic volumes. Basically, these are like any other comic. They have their own little, like package deal. It's a big book with like 4 issues. So with these, they're basically small collections of each issue that you could buy. Usually a smaller version compared to the actual size of like an actual comic. I'll put some stuff up to give a better explanation of this because I'm not good at it. But you usually get about 4 to 5 issues in a volume. And I collected issues 0 through 15 along with the Sonic Selects as well. And they were cooler because they took the special events, so you'd have like a Super Sonic versus Hyper Knuckles, and the books were bigger, and they did cost a little bit more, but I really liked them, and I remember buying the first 2 volumes when I was in middle school, and I remember reading them like religiously, and I would buy a new one like every month they would come out. It was always something I really in the past I'm really fond of. I really loved these growing up, though, as it did allow me to catch up on the early days of the comic. The covers for these volumes were also really good. Some of my favorite covers for the volume, the collections, were volumes 4, 5, 7, 8, and 9. In particular, I want to bring up my copy of volume 7, which is from a library from the King County Library System in Washington. I don't know how this got put on Amazon and got all the way to where I live, which is on the other side of the country, but it makes me laugh, because it makes me think to this day there's probably a library, and that one in particular, is probably still waiting for their version of the Sonic comic Volume 7. This stupid book is going to have so many library book overfees, it's kind of amazing. Around this point, though, is when I started buying issues individually. And I believe the first issue alone, lone issue, I should say, that I bought was Sonic Universe number 6, and this was the second part of the Dark Siege arc. These future arcs were always kind of strange. Like, it's this weird alternate future where Shadow the Hedgehog had married Princess Sally, and Sonic was a hobo, who then later, thanks to Knuckles and his daughter, would help overthrow Shadow and reclaim his glory and become the king, and then marry Sally, and then they would have kids. And yes, as I brought up earlier, Knuckles has a daughter. It's kind of weird. I did also bring up Sonic has kids with Princess Sally. In this arc, Sonic has 2 kids, Sonia and Manic, when they're obviously named after his really weird brother and sister from that really awful Sonic Underground show. While this arc is strange and kind of silly, it did help me get more into the comic. I'd slowly grow more into the Sonic the Hedgehog comics and would either order old issues off Amazon or buy them whenever I visited the local Books A Million, because it's really the only place close to me that actually sells comics. But it is a really cool thing for me. We would try to go visit the places Books A Million at least once a month, and I would always get a new issue. And this would go on for years, so I'm talking a good, like, at least 5, I believe. A lot of it was getting the mainline book, which was the Sonic the Hedgehog book, and I believe at the time it was the Sonic Universe. I think Sonic X had ended at that point, and admittedly have never read the Sonic X. The only thing I know about it is there is a little crossover where Shadow has a thing where he's like traveling through Chaos Control and goes into the Sonic X comic. And what's interesting that comic is actually like based off of the show. So Chris Thorndike, the awful little cunt he is, see Shadow, and he thinks Shadow is dead after the final arc in that, and Shadow from the comic verse is just like, what? It's really cool. I believe Ian Flynn was writing for that at the time, and I really don't do a whole section talking about Ian Flynn, and I really should, maybe for another video, but before I move on, I want to bring up how great of a writer Ian Flynn was for the comics. He definitely saved it, so yeah. I wanted to do a brief section about my favorite storylines, and I'm going to kind of, some of these I'm going to talk a little bit of spoiler, but for the most part, I want to try and avoid some spoilers on some of these. So, some of my favorite storylines in the comic were the Endgame arc. This arc was really huge, as it led into issue 50, and I like this arc because it had been building up for, I believe, up to, really, you could argue, issue 25, which is the Sonic CD kind of arc. It's like a little 2 to 3 part arc where Sonic faces off against Metal Sonic. It's really good. That's also in the Volume 7 one. That's probably the one I was the most excited for, because I just, at that time, I believe, the Sonic CD port, the Taxman version, had come out, and I played it. And even though I'm not the biggest fan of CD, I was still excited because I like Metal Sonic. He's such a cool villain. But this arc had been built up, I believe, from things. That's when the comics started to get serious. So, with this arc, Sonic's on the run because it's believed he murdered Princess Sally. Spoilers for this child-aimed comic book known as Sonic the Hedgehog, but she's not actually dead. It's really cool, though, like I said, because this comic had been built up for a long... or the story, I should say, had been built up for a long time. And it ends with a really cool fight between Sonic and Dr. Robotnik. And Dr. Robotnik has this, like... I don't know what to describe it, but it's kind of like a giant bomb that's gonna, like, kill everything and get rid of Knothole, which is where the Freedom Fighters live. But they do something, too, where, like, it puts the Freedom Fighters into an alternate dimension that's, like, 3 hours ahead. That makes no sense, I know, but it's a comic, and it's Sonic. There's a lot of weird stuff in this arc, I should say. Like, Sonic's getting chased down by Jeffrey St. John, which is this really weird skunk dude. He's terrible. And, Sonic jumps off a cliff, and to make sure he can, like, not fall in the water and die, he pulls some sand out of his shoe, throws it, and then runs on it, which makes no sense, but still. This comic's weird, and it introduced a lot of, like, I don't know if it's introduced, but it brought back a lot of cool characters, like Knuckles is in this comic, because Sonic and Dulcie the Dragon go to this island, and Dulcie Dragon's really weird. I'm rambling, and I recommend reading the comic, so you actually have a good idea what I'm saying with this, but Dulcie's weird, because there's a line where Dulcie says, like, I'm a dragon. Dragons can't lie. And Knuckles is like, yeah, that's true. It's never brought up in the comic before, then they just randomly say that. It's really funny. But, yeah. At the end of the fight, though, between Sonic and Dr. Robotnik, Robotnik is believed to be dead, and after this, and spoiler... Wait, what? He actually did die. Wow. Yeah, Dr. Robotnik actually stays dead, which is a cool little thing I do like, as weird as that sounds. However, though, in previous issues, there is an arc where we have mini Sonics. And when I say mini, I don't mean like small, I mean like multiple Sonics fight a Robo-Robotnik from a different zone or dimension or something. It's really weird. And that's a really cool arc or issue as well, because it's like Sonic into the Sonic-verse, you know? Just not as good. But it did introduce the Robo-Robotnik, and that Robo-Robotnik will later return in issue 75 and become the Eggman, as we know from the games, funny enough. And he actually, a cool thing about that arc is, when he, because he's a robot, he can put his AI, like, in a computer and go to different bodies, and there's a panel where it shows, like, different bodies he has which goes into it. He picks the Sonic Adventure design that we all know and love. But there's also a design that is based off of Hulk Hogan. Brother. Another favorite arc I really like is the Sonic Adventure arc. This one I'm going to keep really short. So, this Archie would try and cover some of the arcs, well, not say arcs, but they would cover the games with an arc. And the closest the games I think actually ever got to getting covered, as far as I know, I don't really know past issue probably 235 with the comics. The closest the games actually ever got, though, is with the Sonic Adventure arc. And if you've played the game, you likely know what happens in this arc, but being someone who absolutely just loves Sonic Adventure, I really like this arc. I know the UK-based Sonic the Comic also did an arc similar to this, but it is kind of different with, like, the actual, like, characters in that, but it's a fun little arc. Probably my favorite arc in the entire series is called A Bold New Mobius, and Anti-Sonic's always a character I have liked. He's just evil Sonic. He's kind of dumb, but he's such an original, the character type, that I really like him. And then later on, he would try to steal the Master Emerald, thanks to Rouge the Bat, and after absorbing the power, he would turn green, and he'd become Scourge the Hedgehog. He's so dumb that I kinda love him. Basically, he's Sonic with a really bad attitude. Scourge would later take over his planet, Mobius. It's just Sonic's Mobius, but if you add an E after the O, it's so original, I know. He then later gets his gang, the Destructics, basically the Chaotix, to try to take over Sonic's world, though. Obviously, that doesn't work out, but, The comic is neat, though, because there's a lot of little neat references. So it's like Sonic and Amy go to Mobius with an E, and the greatest, world. And they have an evil Amy Rose called Rosie the Rascal. And the reason I like this is because one of Amy's original names in Sonic's CD was Rosie the Rascal. It's a really cool fact. And another fun fact, in Sonic's CD, she was also called Princess Sally, which I think is also really cool. Sonic and Amy, though, do travel to this world, and they encounter Scourge and his gang. Later on, we get more hedgehogs added in, which was cool. So we get, like, Shadow, you get Silver. I believe this was Silver's introduction to the comic, and I am in a very small minority who actually likes Silver, so it was cool to see him in there as well. I don't bring it up, but he gets his own little arc in Sonic Universe. It's also a good read. And then we also get a new hedgehog akin to Robin Hood, known as Rob O' the Hedge, which is an awful name, and Metal Sonic as well. We get a big hedgehog brawl. It's really fun. It's a nice little fight they get. It's really cool to see. And Scourge actually learns how to go super, which this was a cool little twist I didn't see coming. So instead of being yellow like Super Sonic, he's purple. And this leads to him and Sonic having a fight, or away from the rest of them. And Sonic actually wins by kind of doing something kind of clever. He makes Scourge run out of Chaos Energy, like how he normally would. Issues 195 and issues 196 are probably two of my favorite issues. That entire arc is really good, but those are probably two of my favorite issues in the comic, and that's one I definitely recommend checking out. Scourge is probably one of the more well-known characters from the book, original ones, I'd say, so I recommend it. Another arc that I think is really underrated is the Sonic Universe arc about Tails, also known as the Tails Adventure. So, remember that really obscure Game Gear game, Tails Adventure? Well, in this spin-off comic Sonic Universe that got adapted, Tails gets his own story, and this is one I was really excited for, because Tails is really good in the comic, unlike how he is in the games now. Because, like, in the comic, Tails isn't afraid to fight. There's even an arc where he fights Sonic, which is kind of cool. In the games, though, he's, well, useless.
Sonic, help me!
This arc basically expands on the non-existent plot of the Game Gear game, and it brings in, like, the bird people. And the cool thing about this is that actually got adapted in its own little arc later on in the Sonic Rivals Battle on Rose arc, which I really like. And it also brings in some of the comics with characters like Antoine and Bunny Rabbit. It's a short 4-issue arc, but if you're curious, I do recommend checking this out. I want to be really brief with this one, because this is probably one of my more favorite arcs they've done, because it's just really fun. And I like that they brought in, like, Tails Adventure, of all things, to do. I like when they try to bring in other, like, past games arc and readapt them. It's really good. And I wanted to give another shout out to Sonic the Hedgehog issue 226 through 230. This was the Sonic Genesis arc, and this arc basically retells the story of Sonic 1, but with the comic characters added in. I can't really go into detail as to why I like this arc and why it exists so much. This is due to spoilers of issues, probably 220 to 225. But I really love this arc, and if you do read this arc in particular, I recommend starting at least around issue 200, maybe 198 actually, but it's a very easy arc to read if you want to get in the comics. I do recommend that. It's one that you can read on your own, and not read other stuff. So if you want a good, like, I guess, taste of the comic, definitely check out the Sonic Genesis arc. I know I can't really do a video about the Sonic the Hedgehog comics without bringing up Ken Penders. It's just kind of unavoidable. Ken Penders began with the comic at issue 11, The Good, the Bad, and the Hedgehog. This is, I believe, when Scourge or Anti-Sonic came in. And I think the early stuff with Penders was decent. I don't really think at this time he had a lot of control, which is probably the good thing. I actually don't think some of Ken's writing is terrible. I think when he's given limits on what he can do, he's actually not a bad writer. He has some decent ideas. The issue for him, though, is when he got more control, well, the comic got, bad. Ken's infamously known for his bad storytelling and really bad artwork. Ken was the big source behind the very weird and terrible Knuckles the Echidna comic that I brought up earlier, and because this comic was so bad, and admittedly was a spin-off comic, this is just gonna happen. It ended shortly due to poor sales, which doesn't surprise me. What's strange, as I brought up earlier, is he can do decent writing. Some of his specials he did, such as the Sonic Triple Trouble comic and Super Sonic vs. Hyper Knuckles, are decent. However, when he, like I brought up earlier, when he got more control, he was bad. Ken's really bad about wanting to force romance into his comic, and there's no better example of this, such as the Knuckles and Julie Sue. Julie Sue is an original character, it's Knuckles' girlfriend. Yes, that's right, Knuckles has a girlfriend. That arc, and I will give Ken credit for trying something new, but this is a comic book about Sonic the Hedgehog, and it's not like romance wasn't new. You have stuff like Sonic and Sally, which I don't want to see romance in a Sonic comic. That's just me. I just want to see Sonic do some fun stuff. But like, you can do little hints and stuff at it, but like, I don't care about it. And he did this so much in the comic where he forced in romance. And listen, maybe it's just me, but like, Sonic and romance don't mix. And I know I'm repeating myself, but I need to, like, mention that. This guy loved forcing that stuff in. I think the biggest example I can give to prove this is the arc after Sonic returned from space. It's a really weird one, I know. And yes, this happened. Everyone thought Sonic was dead. They thought he blew up a bomb or something and he went to space. It's kind of like that arc from Dragon Ball Z, where you think Goku dies on Namek, but he doesn't. He meets aliens. And Sonic does the same thing. It's a very weird arc. Thanks, Ken. But when Sonic returned, you'd think, oh, this could be interesting. Sonic's been gone from his home in a long time. A lot could change. And something kind of like a time skip happened, you know? But we thought it would be good, and we were dead wrong. Issue 134 is regarded as one of the worst issues in the comic, and probably one of the worst things I've ever read. Ken really liked diving into the backstories of one of the characters, and it could be cool, you know? I like that. I don't mind if he tries to talk about, like, Knuckles and what happened to the tribe or whatever. It's a neat idea. However, Ken didn't really seem like a fan of Sonic, and that's where I think his issues were. So, he wanted to make his own comic, but I think Sonic was just kind of there, and it was his gateway into what he wanted to make. And as you probably know now, Ken is making his own comics with the Lara Sue Chronicles, and they look, bad. The Knuckles stories were full of these ancient family that Knuckles didn't know about, and these weird gods like Interjack and Lost Cities, and it's like he wanted to make his own, like, Indiana Jones comic, you know, which, except for any other comic, this could be decent. Like, it's not a terrible idea, but it needs to be written well, and, well, it was not. I could probably just make a whole video talking about Ken Penders, and, you know, it wouldn't be saying anything new, and I'm not saying anything new talking about this, so yeah, but it is very well known that Ken's days of the comic are considered the dark age for the Sonic the Hedgehog comics, and they really didn't get better until Ian Flynn, who is arguably the best writer for the comics, stepped in. Also, to bring up another example to describe how bad Ken Penders was, I wanted to discuss something with Penders that I think really truly sums up his run of the comic, and that's Sonic the Hedgehog issue 155, and that issue is Sonic sitting in a ball crying. And I have to ask, why? Why is this a cover of a Sonic the Hedgehog comic? Like, just imagine being a casual fan of Sonic. Like, you're a young 10-year-old boy, and you're playing Sonic Adventure 2 Battle on your GameCube, and you're having a really fun time with it, you know? Really fun game. And then you go in the store one day, and you see that comic sitting on the shelf. Like, what is your thought process gonna be on that? I'm just curious, like, for people who don't know anything about the comic, this is your first time seeing this issue, I'm genuinely curious, what do you think about this cover? Like, does this make you want to read it? Like, besides, like, cringe you want to read, like, would you actually want to read this? It's funny in a cringe way, but, like, it's still very weird. There is admittedly a lot more I could say about this comic. It was such a fun part of my life growing up, and this is a really short video to talk about it. I could honestly probably make a whole series talking about it. But this, alongside Ultimate Spider-Man, are probably the only comic series I've ever really been able to get into. I'd eventually try reading, like, new comics in the future, but that's for another time, I guess. The Archie version of the comic did end in 2017, but even with the arcs I brought up here, there's still a lot of other great arcs I do recommend, and one of them being the really, really fun Sonic and Mega Man crossover. And that one, just for Dr. Eggman and Dr. Wily alone, like, teaming up and, like, having their banter, it really is great. And I might make a video of the Mega Man comic in the future, because it's a really good comic, I think. This comic will always hold a special place in my heart, because it was kind of like a monthly tradition for me, where I would go get a new issue, and I would read it on the way home, or I would watch it when I go home from school, and every day when I'd watch it, it would give me something, or before I'd watch it, when I would leave school and get on the bus, it was something I always look forward to. If you want more takes on the comic, I highly recommend watching Cybersoul 13's video on the comic, and if you want a really good series about the UK Fleetways on the comic, I really recommend checking out Black Dog Brew's series on it. It's a bit long, I believe it's about 24 to 26 parts, but it's a really good, in-depth, I don't know how to really describe it, series on the comic, and it goes through, like, every single character. I really love his videos on that, they're very good. So, I'm just curious, for those who have watched this far, what are your thoughts on the Sonic Archie comic? If you've read it, if you haven't, you know, what's your favorite Sonic merchandise that you have history with? It can be an action figure, it can be a lunchbox, you know, it can be that weird Sonic ice cream thing, you know. I'm just curious. This is just something very short video I wanted to make talking about the comic, because it's really important to me, and I just want to talk about it, so, yeah. So, thank you all for watching, and I hope you all have an amazing day.